I've seen the dark universe yawning, where the black planets roll without aim, where they roll in their horror unheeded, without knowledge or luster or name.
So in early 2019 to late 2019, when I was 24, I began working as a security guard on a coal mine surface mine in rural West Virginia. The mine was located about 35 miles up a mountain on a mountaintop removal site where blasting had previously occurred years ago. My shift started at 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. My job was basically to drive a security van along the surface of the mine and surrounding areas to look for intruders who may have been trying to sneak into the mining property and steal things such as copper, mining equipment and tools. Driving to the top of the mine took me about 25 minutes. The radius was about 150 to 200 square miles that belonged to the company. Some of it was mountaintop removal sites, but most of it was wooded areas with old, abandoned logging roads. It was quite legitimately the middle of nowhere in the woods. I had little to no cell phone service. The area I guarded was a 30-mile radius of logging road. The road overlooked a large mountain ridge. I worked safely and freely on the site for about 6 months before any strange occurrences happened. The first occurrence, with whatever I counted, happened around mid-fall, right after sunset. I was sitting in the van on my site, overlooking a large ridge that seemed to be miles of empty mountain. I saw a vague, dim light emerge from a boulder and slowly float into the sky. It looked almost like a ball or orb of light. Hours later, several balls of light would slowly emerge from above the tree lines and float into the sky. When in the sky, they would assemble and dance in odd formations. This happened for months, and I would frequently videotape the incidents. Another strange occurrence I had was one evening that I was working, a bright orange ball of gas or fire would come from what appeared to be within the mountaintop and dance around the sky before disappearing. I recorded this incident as well. Around this time, I felt a very dark and ominous presence from the lights. I would have times where the orbs appeared to follow me. I could also drive through several logging roads and see what looked like formations of lights sitting on top of mountains. I requested to be moved to another site or location. However, I was denied. The most frightening encounter I had was one night when I was driving off of the mountaintop at the end of my shift. The road off of the site was a very long, narrow, winding road that passed over a couple of ridges. On my way out, I saw a bright white ball of light about 100 yards away from me, on a mountaintop floating in the sky. It looked like pure light or pure gas in a sphere. The sphere's light was so bright and so intense that the light almost blinded me, even in pitch blackness. It was equivalent to staring directly into the sun. I lost all of the air from my lungs and could not catch my breath. I felt my muscles becoming paralyzed and my vision fading. I stopped the vehicle and took a minute to catch my breath before the orb appeared to ascend into the night sky before disappearing. I also felt some type of telepathic communication being transmitted from this entity into me that is very hard to describe because I cannot put it into words, but I feel as if I was mentally abducted. I immediately left my position after this incident. After that encounter, I began developing symptoms of multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and ALS. I saw several medical specialists who were unable to find anything in my blood testing or scans. Later that month, I developed a bad bout of fluid in my lungs and around my heart and fell very ill with no previous health issues. I also began losing my vision and seeing spots regularly. I experienced night terrors, anxiety, and insomnia. I personally believe I was attacked or harmed by some type of extraterrestrial weapon. I have remaining symptoms that have not passed since. If anyone can help me in trying to figure this out, message me personally so we can talk more. Side note, it was announced to me during my employment there that the US Navy had purchased a remote piece of land in an undisclosed location nearby for training exercises. I never saw any military personnel or vehicles. However, several co-workers did during daylight hours.
I'm not sure if this was just an alien visiting me or if I was actually abducted, but this is what happened one night. I was at my boyfriend's house and we went to bed like we normally do. His bed was in the corner of the room against the wall, and I slept on the right side of the bed and him on the left. I woke up very unexpectedly in the middle of the night. I was dizzy and nauseous and confused. I got right up, grabbed my phone to use the flashlight, and left to go to the bathroom. I'm surprised I didn't fall over, but the room was spinning and I was really lightheaded. As I got to the bathroom and waited, I was sure I was going to throw up. So I just sat down on the toilet to wait because I couldn't help myself. Checking the time on my phone, it was around 2 to 3 a.m. I sat there for around 10 minutes as the nausea, dizziness, lightheadedness, and the confusion slowly went away as the minutes passed. Thankfully, I didn't end up throwing up, and when I felt good enough to stand up, I left and went back to our bedroom. My boyfriend hadn't woken up from any of that happening, so I just laid back down as I got comfy and was trying to go back to sleep. Right when I closed my eyes, I saw the room exactly how it was in that moment, from the same point of view, except what was different was there was a tall gray standing next to the bed looking down at me, maybe 2 feet away. It was almost like a flashback of some sort. I saw it for about 3 seconds before I opened up my eyes again, because I got scared, but nothing was there. I woke up my boyfriend and told him that I saw something in the room with us. He groggily told me he really didn't care, or maybe just didn't process it. So then I really did try back to go to sleep. Only this time I laid on my left side facing my boyfriend. The next morning I was trying to figure out exactly what had happened, and that's when I put it all together. The nausea, the confusion, and dizziness are all pretty common when people talk about their abduction experiences. I tried to look at my body for any sort of thing that may have planted in me. I didn't see anything new or anything different. However, I do have these 3 bumps that formed a triangle on my left wrist. And I've had those since I can remember. They don't hurt, and they're not a different color. They don't affect me at all. But I've always wondered what they were. I'm not even sure if it's connected at all to what happened, or to all other humanoid encounters I've had throughout my life. But I just wanted to share one of the most crazy encounters I've ever had.
I have quite a few rather weird memories from my childhood. I can't remember exactly the order in which they happened, and some of them are hazy and almost dreamlike. But I can say with near certainty that they really happened. The first of these events, if I am to conjure up a chronological order based on guesswork, take place while I was staying at an isolated English farmhouse with my then best friend. I woke up in the middle of the night and found that I couldn't breathe. I've never had an asthma attack before or since, and yet this must be what one would feel like. I couldn't breathe or speak. I tried to scream for help but couldn't, and so I instead elected to knock over a lamp when I saw my friend's mother walk past in the corridor outside my bedroom. Luckily, she noticed me and convinced my parents to take me to the nearby hospital. My mother took me out to the car while my father stayed in the house to look after my younger brother, who was a baby in a crib at the time. Once I was in the car with the blanket over me, my mother left me there temporarily so that she could get changed out of her pajamas and into some clothes appropriate to take me to the hospital. As I sat there in the car, my attention was drawn to an enormous globe of red light on the horizon. It was huge, like the sun but entirely red. Imagine holding a basketball arm's length away from your face, and then you'll get the idea of the size of the thing from my perspective. Its light was contained within a circular shape, so it wasn't like it was lighting up the entire sky. This thing moved across the sky from right to left in a smooth, wide arc movement. It went up and then down in about 1 minute, seeming to be very much controlled and methodical. It wasn't jerky or sudden movement like a meteor or anything. Eventually, I rationalized the event away as being a hypnagogic hallucination, until I asked my dad if he had ever seen a UFO, to which he shockingly replied that he had indeed seen something weird in the sky. As he told his story, he revealed that he had seen a bright red light on the horizon that night while looking after my brother. Eventually, they took me to the hospital, and I remember that the doctor seeing me said that there was nothing medically wrong with me. It was just a weird incident, which apparently didn't have a real causation. That morning, I woke up and experienced some sort of weird hallucination. I remember opening my eyes and seeing these colorful floaters around my field of vision, like what you get if you screw your eyes tightly shut. I briefly caught sight of a spindly hand reaching up from underneath my friend's bed. It looked like a load of fleshy strings all tightly wound around each other to form the shape of a spindly hand with sharp fingers. It was brownish pink in color. I can't remember what happened after that, but would guess that the hallucination disappeared and I began my day disturbed. Now here's where things get weirder. I can't remember if these dreams were already a thing in my life before I saw the red sun, or if they started afterwards. Quite frequently, as I was trying to sleep, I would get a very clear image in my head of a bulbous humanoid head looking up from the foot of my bed. I originally thought of it as one of Santa's elves, and I would normally see it around Christmas time. It would always give me an intense physical reaction of fear, shivering and screwing my eyes tightly shut to try and banish the thought. To describe the thing, it was a wide-faced entity with enormous eyes with crystal blue irises. It had a wrinkled forehead and a grotesque grin with white, square teeth. It smelled like balloon rubber. I can't remember if there were any ears or a nose. I just remember the eyes and the smile and the shape of the face, which was kind of oval. I remember seeing the eyes slowly blinking like a puppet or animatronic. The whole creature looked very fake. I can't remember where such a vivid image came from, but I remember it being viscerally disturbing to me. A possible later theory was that my brain lifted the image from an illustration of a gremlin that I'd seen in an encyclopedia of folklore. It had a similar kind of smile and face shape, but I have no idea where I got the blue eyes, the blinking, and even the smell of the creature from. And no, I can't find the illustration anywhere nowadays. I got the book from a library in Swansea, Wales. The third and final possibly abduction-related memory I have is the one that's the hardest to nail down. I was staying in a tent with the same friend who I'd been staying with when I saw the red sun, and we were telling scary stories about a monster that he insisted existed, called the Boomer. This kid was actually really quite influential on me, and I remember attributing a few other weird experiences to this likely fictional critter. But back to the story. So he and I were telling stories. Well, more like he was just terrifying me while I listened in silence, before we eventually decided to get some sleep. I remember waking up and seeing the tent lit up, as if someone was shining a torch through it, or as if there were car headlights directly outside. My friend also woke up to this same sight, and I remember debating with him about whether or not we should leave the tent to see what was causing the disturbance. Being plucky 10-year-olds, we eventually decided to go outside and face down the Boomer. This proved to be something of an anticlimactic venture, However, as we discovered that it was just his dad driving his tractor. We didn't realize at the time that he didn't own a tractor, but it made sense to us at the time. We went back to bed and eventually forgot about the entire weird event, until recently, when I was trying to remember more about the boomer and the weird experiences I'd attributed to it. So what do you think? I've tried to assemble my 3 abduction-related memories into a barely chronological collection of weirdness. These are all just how I remember them. I can guarantee that the red sun UFO thing actually happened, and that I was played with the image of the elf figure. But the one with the tractor strikes me as the weakest link here. I guess that it is possible that it was a dream. Then again, why would I remember it so much later? Or maybe just caused by his dad getting a tractor from a nearby farmhouse. But the red sun UFO and the elf are definitely things that I can't entirely explain.
I just wanted to share my 2 major experiences because I want this information out here so humanity can know that this stuff is real and what has personally helped me when dealing with all of this. My first experience I can remember I had with quote-unquote aliens was when I was a child. They would somehow put me in a trance and make me walk to the hall closet and just stand there, unable to move. I would be filled with this intense fear, and then suddenly hundreds of small grays would come out of that closet. I would then black out, I guess until maybe I had to do it again the next day. This continued for like a week or 2. I have no real memory of what they did after that, but I know it was horrible. My second encounter I remember when I was walking in my apartment and waiting for a friend to open the hall door for me. Suddenly a blue flash of light illuminated the entire hallway like a lightning strike or something. Friend was like, "What was that?" And neither of us knew what it was. My first initial thought was that someone took a picture of us, but it was only us inside that hall, and the flash was not like a camera, even though it was kind of similar. When I went to bed, a blue light kept appearing and disappearing on my wall. I used to see UFOs at night, mainly the triangular ones, sometimes cylinders, but mostly triangles. I would always see lights in the sky, and they gave me a very creepy and eerie feeling. I really began to start feeling so uncomfortable being outdoors all alone at night. The worst experience that I can remember was when I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I woke up with this sense of intense fear. I don't think it was sleep paralysis because I could actually move around, but I was definitely absolutely terrified. It felt like the devil was coming for my soul, that type of thing. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, I saw 4 very tall gray aliens looking down at me. I started screaming, freaking out. I hate everything about them. They're disgusting. They look like they do in the movies, but way worse in person. They were very tall, gray skin, and their eyes. That's the worst thing about them. I really don't know what it is, but they're just pure evil. Every time I would look into them, I would start screaming uncontrollably. I screamed so loud I swore I had to have woken up my brother and grandmother, and they would run in to save me. When I'd have that thought, I was shown a blue force field-like thing covering my entire room, and then they would telepathically tell me nobody could hear me scream, and they could do whatever they want to me. They started trying to do something to my brain, and I was screaming, "No, no, no!" They kept operating on me. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it felt evil. I tried to use my mouth to ask God for help, and they did something that instantly cut my voice off from speaking. So I started praying inside my mind, and I could tell it was getting them mad. They kept trying to stop me from praying in my mind, but they couldn't. I felt them getting angrier and angrier, and then I felt myself getting stronger and them weaker. I prayed, long and hard, and I could use it in my mind as they kept trying to stop me, but they couldn't. Then it was morning, and I didn't feel tired or anything. The last and final experience I had was with 2 of them drawing on my whiteboard. They were wearing sunglasses, and it felt again that they were evil. Honestly, I know everybody has different experiences, but prayer and trusting in God definitely does something to hurt them, or else they wouldn't try to stop us from doing it. I've also had experiences where calling on God or praying has helped me and saved me from demonic creatures. There are some that look like manatees, They were observing me for a while, and I prayed to God to please destroy any that tried to come near me. The next day, there was a dead mantis on my car. His body was perfectly intact. It was like he got burned to death suddenly or something. I've never seen anything like it. If you haven't tried fully submitting and trusting God when you have these experiences, give it a chance. That's all I have for now.
I haven't spoken of this, but to a couple of people I trust. I saw a being last year in 2021. I want to give some back history first though. I saw my first UFO when I was 7, playing in my driveway. I had ran inside and got my mum and grandma. It was a silver disc, maybe only about 500 feet up. Anyways, we just stood there, and we stood there a couple of hours till it finally zipped straight up. I then became obsessed with UFOs, going to my elementary school library, getting all the books I could. Then at 10, I got sleep paralysis really bad. The first incident, I was living with my cousins and we all decided to sleep in the living room that night. I woke up with an eraser-sized hole in my ankle and still have it to this day. My sleep paralysis got bad in my teens. Almost every time I went to sleep, I never saw anything but shadows a few times. I became a UFO investigator and photo-video analyst. I learned from a man called Prophet Yahweh on how to call UFOs in 2008, after seeing him on the news and finding a way to contact him. In 2015, I formed my own little group with a YouTube channel. I know it sounds crazy, but almost all UFOs I filmed were from me calling them. Eventually, it got taken down, videos and pics gone, and my laptop was literally fried. In 2016, I got a mystery illness that was pretty bad, to the point I almost died, and it still affects me to this day. Anyway, we are getting to the point now. I formed a new group. I still call UFOs and have only had a few technological incidences with corruption, etc. In 2020 and 2021, I had nothing to do but call them every day and film and photograph the objects and odd visitations from military crafts, authorities, etc. Gang stalking. Till one night, I woke up at 3 a.m. exact, unable to sleep. I had a cig, checked Facebook, went back in, took antacid tablets and played some Elder Scrolls Oblivion on Xbox 360. I eventually got tired and fell asleep at 5 a.m. I slept on the floor that night, as I did many nights because sometimes my sickness was so bad that I couldn't climb up my loft bed. I got woken up by a strange sound I can only describe as like the Transformers from the movie or dubstep. That's the only thing close to it. Just weird vibrational mechanical noises. I had said, "What the hell was that?" laughing it off, and fell straight back asleep. I then woke a second time to a naked being crouched by my right leg, looking towards my feet. At first thought, I had thought it was my 7-year-old brother and had said in my head, "What the hell is he doing?" As soon as I thought that, the being quickly looked at me, and I knew right away what it was when I saw the black eyes. I couldn't move, and I couldn't speak, but it was different to sleep paralysis. My body wasn't buzzing, and I didn't feel weird like the usual sleep paralysis episode. I was fully awake and aware. I then thought, "Who are you and what are you doing?" It ignored me, but kept looking back at me every bit. I then started to feel emotion I can only describe as not my own. It made me feel like a kid or something. Me pretending to be asleep and peeking at it. Imagine you're a kid. You know your mum is a tooth fairy. You're awake, but pretending to be asleep. Kinda like that. It moved, acted, almost robotic or insect-like. No motion, just fast-paced. The being eventually came towards my upper body, and I was able to look at its features a bit more. I remember thinking and being surprised at how human it looked. Skin tone was a bit tan. The chin wasn't pointy, but just defined and smaller. Indentations on the sides of its head as you'd expect with normal skull structure. The eyes were almost normal human-sized, just slightly bigger and matte black. The nose was like a baby nose. It pulled me by my shirt to where I was sitting straight up, legs out, and came right up to my face. And then I noticed it had a mouth, like as if someone got a razor and cut a slit in clay, barely noticeable. Looking me in the face, it brought its hand around with its index finger extended. On the tip of its finger was a very small square, or rectangular, baby blue light. It looked almost like an LED. The being proceeded to shove the finger in my nostril, and I blacked out. I wake up maybe 10 or 11 a.m. It was March 7th, 2021. I jumped up, as you would with any intruder in the home, panicking. My pants were around my ankles. My blankets were nowhere near me, and I was freaking out. I ran to the bathroom with some of my UV light equipment and checked myself, as I needed verification and was familiar with UV lighting for investigations. Sure enough, I had 3 lines in a triangular pattern behind the knee, and 1 line down the center of the knee. I had my pants sent to the lab for analysis, and still have yet to receive any news updates. I went into a PTSD type mode for quite some time after that. It just kept replaying in my head, over and over. I even saw a glimmer of light in the kitchen when my family was cooking, and it made me start to panic. I do have a couple of pictures of the pants, and I have quite a few art renditions of me trying to recreate what it looked like. I stopped doing anything UFO related, and stopped going outside. I even started recording myself sleep. As of recent, in mid-2022, I've started getting back into the UFO research, filming, photography, documenting. It still freaks me out, but I've always faced my fears. I even keep a painting of the thing in my room, which was hard to look at for a while, but I think it's healthy to face my fear. I don't know what that was all about, and I think about it often in my day-to-day life. I've wanted to meet an alien since I was a kid, but never imagined it being like that. I thought I'd share this though, since many of us who experience sleep paralysis seem to have these odd similarities, connections, and interests. Thank you. Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.